Welcome back, where facts matter, questions are welcomed, and critical thinking is encouraged. If you're watching and appreciate independent, in-depth reporting that doesn't shy away from the details, take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and let us know what you think in the comments. Your voice is part of this conversation. Now, today's development from the U.S. justice system has raised more than a few eyebrows and sparked significant public discourse. After nearly a decade of service, Maureen Comey, yes, the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, has been fired from her role as a federal prosecutor in Manhattan. It's a move that comes not only as a surprise to many in the legal world, but one that's entangled in political tension, speculation, and echoes of ongoing investigations. For those unfamiliar with her, Maureen Comey isn't just known for her last name. She built a reputation as a serious and focused prosecutor, particularly in high-profile cases that made national headlines. She was the lead prosecutor in the criminal case against Ghislaine Maxwell, the longtime associate of Jeffrey Epstein. She brought Maxwell to trial, secured a conviction on 5 counts related to sex trafficking, and ultimately saw her sentenced to 20 years in prison. That is no small accomplishment. It was a complex case, legally and emotionally charged, and it placed Comey in the center of one of the most scrutinized judicial proceedings in recent years. So why was someone with that kind of track record fired? According to reports, including those from NBC News, the justification offered was rooted in Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, the section that outlines the powers of the presidency, including the ability to appoint and remove executive officials. A source familiar with the matter reportedly said that Article 2 was cited in the letter informing Comey of her termination. No further justification, no additional context. This is where the story takes a turn. The timing of the firing coincides with renewed efforts from the Trump-aligned wing of the government to investigate several Obama-era officials. That includes James Comey, Maureen's father, and former CIA Director John Brennan, both accused by some in political circles of misleading Congress during the investigation into possible connections between Trump's 2016 campaign and Russian interference efforts. Now, it's worth emphasizing here, the termination of Maureen Comey is happening amid an environment of intensifying political retribution. Some observers argue that this move is not about job performance or misconduct, but rather a political signal. A message about loyalty, about association, and about power dynamics in the justice system. Henfer, a former federal prosecutor who worked directly with Comey in the Southern District of New York, offered some context that sheds light on just how shocking this decision is for those who know her.
According to Henfer, Maureen was deeply respected in her office. She supervised major units, including violent and organized crime and public corruption. She wasn't a back-office figure. She was front and center in some of the department's most challenging cases. And recently she gave what Henfer described as one of the most effective rebuttal jury addresses ever witnessed during a trial involving high-profile defendant Sean Diddy Combs. In other words, we're not talking about someone whose performance or professional conduct was in question. We're talking about someone seen internally as exemplary. The decision to remove her has therefore struck many as abrupt, unnecessary, and deeply political.
Now here's where things become even more controversial. For months, some voices from pro-Trump media spheres have been calling for Comey's removal. Laura Loomer, a far-right commentator, questioned publicly why Maureen Comey was still employed at the DOJ, suggesting without evidence that her presence was somehow suspicious. Another voice, Charlie Kirk, painted her continued employment as a symptom of a so-called deep state conspiracy. The implication? That Maureen's prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't about justice, but part of some elaborate cover-up. That despite securing a conviction, she should be removed because of her last name and who her father is. And let's pause here. This is someone who held a high-profile sex trafficker accountable in court. Someone who did what many claimed they wanted. Justice for Epstein's victims, transparency, accountability. And yet, instead of celebrating that success, she's being labeled a problem. Why? Because her father is James Comey? Because her name appears in the same news cycles as Trump-era scandals? Or is it something else entirely? A test case for how political power can reach into institutions that were once considered more independent? It's a strange and disturbing moment, especially when you consider the broader constitutional implications. Let's return to Article 2 for a moment. Yes, the Constitution grants the president considerable authority over the executive branch, but civil service protections have long existed to insulate career officials, especially those in roles like federal prosecutors, from abrupt political swings. These protections were created to maintain a professional, stable bureaucracy that doesn't serve the president personally, but the public. Maureen Comey was not a political appointee. She was a career prosecutor, serving under multiple administrations. And yet, the current legal theory being pushed by some in power, known as the unitary executive theory, argues that the president can fire anyone in the executive branch at will. That theory is gaining momentum and, troublingly, some support in the Supreme Court. If that holds, then civil service may no longer be a shield against political pressure. The Justice Department could become, in effect, another political arm, not a pillar of impartial law enforcement. For many legal scholars and former DOJ employees, that's a dangerous path. It raises serious questions. Will more career officials be removed for political reasons? What message does this send to prosecutors across the country who take on powerful defendants or controversial cases? And what does it mean for public trust in the justice system when even successful prosecutions are met with retaliation? Let's also not forget that Maureen Comey wasn't just prosecuting Maxwell. She was part of a broader set of cases involving violent crime, corruption, and organized criminal activity. Her removal doesn't just affect her career. It potentially disrupts the work of entire investigative teams, cases midstream, victims waiting for justice, evidence being gathered, indictments being prepared. And this leads to a deeper concern, not just about this one firing, but about the environment it's creating. When a prosecutor like Maureen Comey is let go, not for misconduct or failure, but seemingly for political optics, what kind of message does that send to the next generation of attorneys? To young lawyers entering public service, to women who've made careers in male-dominated institutions? Does it tell them that merit doesn't matter? That their parents' names can be used against them? That justice has a political price tag? Now, none of this is to say that prosecutors are above oversight. Accountability is essential in any public office, but accountability and scapegoating are not the same. One strengthens institutions, the other corrodes them. So, what happens next? That will depend partly on public pressure, legal analysis, and whether more voices inside the DOJ and legal community speak up. It will also depend on whether this becomes a pattern, the first of many dismissals, or remains an isolated event. And perhaps most importantly, it will depend on whether the public remains vigilant, because the balance of power between politics and the law is only as strong as the people's willingness to defend it. This isn't just about Maureen Comey. It's about the integrity of a system that promises equal justice under the law. When those promises are chipped away for political convenience, we all lose something. If you're still with us, thank you for listening to the whole story. These issues deserve our full attention, not just a headline or a soundbite. And if you believe more people should hear this, that these conversations matter, help us grow by subscribing, giving this video a like, and sharing your thoughts below. Do you think Maureen Comey's firing was justified? Do you believe civil service protections are still strong enough? What does this say about the future of justice in America? We'll be reading your comments and continuing this conversation together. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay informed, and thank you for watching